Welcome in, everyone, to another IT Leadership Lab live stream. We've got a great one today. We're getting in the holiday spirit with this admin stocking and talking about things that might be on your wish list, things that should be on your wish list. And we're going to talk to a couple people that have experience kind of uh, working in IT and getting that wish list together. But if you are new to the IT Leadership Lab, welcome in. This is a community dedicated to IT leaders. It's a place for you to share content with each other, learn from peers, people that have actually been in IT leadership roles before and are currently in IT leadership roles. And it's a way for you to build community and just kind of improve those soft skills when it comes to IT leadership. Because I know a lot of IT leaders don't often get that kind of support whenever they're put into a leadership role. So that's kind of the goal here at the lab. And then we also host bi-monthly webinars where we discuss various IT leadership topics and bring on people that are actually leaders within the space so that they can share their expertise. And so I kind of ask questions and get their feedback and kind of hoping to learn a lot from these experienced IT leaders. So um, I want to go ahead and have my panelists introduce themselves. So Jason, if you want to start and talk a little bit about your journey in IT and then what you're doing now.
Sure, absolutely. So, hi everyone. I'm Jason Granite. I am the Director of Information Systems for Wish Farms. We are a marketer and grower of berries. So, we're in strawberries, blueberries, blackberries, raspberries. We sell direct to big box retailers. And I head the infrastructure and data and analytics team here at Wish. So, I have a small team of 5 or 6 people, and we're responsible basically for everything and anything IT related, and honestly, some things that really aren't. So I've been here at Wish now for about 9 years over the course of 2 stints. But I've been in the industry since the early 2000s. So I've been just about everywhere, doing just about everything. Consulted, come up through the technical side, data and analytics. So I've got a little bit of everything, but I function as our C-level technical executive here. So definitely excited to be back again and looking forward to talk.
Yeah, really excited to have you back on. You've been a great panelist and excited to see what you have in store. Clark, do you want to introduce yourself and talk a little bit about what you're doing and your journey in IT?
Sure. I'm Clark Sandlin, President and CEO of Zerka, which is a managed IT service provider for private equity, hedge funds, and family offices. We've been in this world since 2004. Prior to that, I worked for Hicks Mutating First, which is a huge private equity group worldwide. They own the Dallas Stars, Texas Rangers, and Liverpool Reds. Recently, Tom Hicks passed last week, and it's a huge event for all of us here in Dallas, and also for us, especially being connected to the Hicks family. But yeah, I've been working in IT since forever. I mean, my first computer was Commodore 64 in the early 80s. And yeah, exactly. And worked at the help desk in college at the University of Memphis and kind of worked my way up from there. So I've had every position, so I totally understand every aspect of this job.
Yeah, but it's definitely an interesting job because I feel like there are so many different kind of hats that IT leaders have to wear, and it's you're the technical expert, but you also are the business expert when it comes to everything IT. So, yeah, it can get kind of convoluted. So, um, well, in this stream, we're going to be, like I said, we're getting in the holiday spirit. We're going to be talking about wish lists. We always think about what gifts people can buy us. People will constantly be asking, well, what do you want for Christmas? In IT, often you are not asked what you want, and you kind of have to propose all of that yourself. But we want to talk about the things that might be on an IT leader's wish list for the next year. If there are any specific gifts or anything that IT leaders would like to make their life a little bit easier or improve how their organization runs. So I think the first question I have is, what is kind of at the very top of your wish list right now?
Yeah, I'll hop in first if that's fine, Clark. So for us, for sure, we're going through this period of what I would call digital modernization. So we have coming up this next year larger expenditures in core ERP system change. We are also making a transition and upgrading network infrastructure across 4 of our sites. So we have a lot of expenditures that are coming up from that perspective. To be fair, I can cheat a little bit on this one because our fiscal year actually starts in July. So I actually knew that this stuff was coming already. So I kind of put my wish list together and my ask for Christmas in July, if you will. But we definitely have some large things that are coming forward to help kind of bring us modern wise. Um, from kind of when we moved in to saying, all right, we've grown, right? The business has grown in the past 5 years since we've moved into our new building that we had built from the ground up. So now it's time to kind of upgrade some of those systems and things that we had in place there. So definitely ERP network upgrade for us. Everybody's always talking about the AI side, right? Which there's something to be said there, and we'll get into that, I'm sure, later in this, but those are the 2 big things for us is definitely around ERP modernization and network modernization.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You said the word early. AI. That's what I don't want to see next year. I'm tired of it. I've got AI fatigue already. Like I'm just, I mentioned a while back that one of our clients did this AI prompt and brought it to us and said, "Hey, I'm going to build this network for us," and he just blew up their network. So it was just complete mess. Anyway, but before we get into that nonsense, for Wishlist. So what's cool about running an MSP is you have hundreds and hundreds of clients, so you get kind of a good feel for what's going on out in IT for a bunch of people. We deal with a lot of smaller companies, so we kind of get a pulse on what's going on specifically with private equity and family offices. So the high net worth individuals. So once they start spinning up and getting investors and there's movement there, of course, the rest of the world doesn't see it until, a few months later, 6 months later. But right now, I can tell you, private equity is definitely spinning up, and there's a lot of investor movement, probably to take advantage of some of the downturn, buy up businesses, which is what they do. So my wish list is kind of beholden to them. But when they come to me and say, "Oh, we're ready to turn on the spigot," and we've got a lot of people moving offices, I guess taking advantage of the real estate opportunities out there, the commercial real estate opportunities, a lot of consolidation. So now they're coming to us with, okay, we are going to invest in the IT infrastructure. So my wish list just got pretty big. So we're doing some. One of our manufacturing clients is growing significantly and adding on several warehouses, and with that comes security cameras, network infrastructure, internet challenges because they're out in the country, all kinds of crazy stuff. So wish list is pretty much a blank check right now, which I'm really excited about. It just kind of comes down to getting my team to like, let's be realistic. Let's right size this. Let's to where we can manage it, kind of thing. So a lot of infrastructure changes, a lot of infrastructure investment. So that's what I'm looking at. And on the personal side, anything from Hack 5, I love stuff, gadgets. I'm such a gadget guy. I also buy a lot of this stuff for our clients, and I kind of use it on them too. Some white hat hacking stuff. So my favorite one right now is the Wi-Fi Pineapple pager.
I'll have to look that up.
I'll beat you with the link, Brittany.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I already
Oh,
had to do that.
well, cool. So that actually is a great lead into a next question. You said you kind of have a blank check as far as things that you can do. If money were no object, if there was no budget restraints, no budget restrictions, what is the biggest thing that you would want to do from an IT perspective?
Uh, so I is that Clark? Is that
Oh, it's for anyone. It's fine. Either of you.
You go ahead, Jason.
yeah? So for me, so we have as part of our kind of offering, we have some light manufacturing that goes on. So one of the items that I have been trying to push, for a little while now is some automation of some of the packaging lines and things that we have, because just like everything else, while we've got kind of a push for the hey, what does the American worker look like? We also have some of that push that you're seeing with, it's specific for us in the farming industry, but you're seeing it across the board, right? Where, you say, hey, I don't have the people, I don't have the workforce to be able to do these, manual things in the warehouse or manual things in the field. So for me, from a blank check perspective, right, I would love to be able to transition some of those people to doing some other items inside of our warehouses and then pull them off of like the manufacturing lines and things. So automating like our fruit going in from their storage containers into the line for picking and sorting and quality control and things like that. We do have obviously machinery, but not all of it is necessarily automated. We still have what feels like an army of people kind of around that, right? To say, hey, let's pick some of this out. Let's, make sure that, the clamshell denester has jammed again. So someone quick get in there, throw those three away and let's get that thing, back moving and going again. So I think for us, it would be automation, right? As you look at those from a warehousing and manufacturing or even a distribution perspective, that stuff can get really costly really, really fast. So for me with a blank check, that's 100% something that I would love to talk about and love to explore. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I agree with that 100%. I think automation is like the most important thing. Automation versus AI, right? So automation is really where a lot of people are starting to concentrate and circle the wagons on. I agree with that 100% because you know with the reduction in workforce, the lot talent is hard to come by. I know we hear all these tech layoffs, but the talent is not easy to find. So for me, if I had a blank check, of course I'd spend it on my talent. I'd salaries, R&D, those kind of things. Making it a better environment to work in, which I do allocate that for my team, but for the our clients and the people we work with, I'd love to help out there too because we do have some staff augmentation that we do for some of our larger clients who have our IT staff, and they're trying to
Mhm.
do the same thing. So because they're dealing with out in the field, not enough employees. They don't show up all the time, and you need to automate. Like for us, it's oil and gas, so we have a lot of IoT and uh, you know automations and SCADA systems and things like that that we have to make sure are running because it's taking a place of a human being. Which I don't know, Jason, if you run into this, but it is such a challenge, even just keeping those systems up. And despite what we hear in the media about robots are going to take over our jobs and stuff, I'm waiting. It's not going to happen. I mean, if you see some of these systems, it's just like, man, it's put together with duct tape and and glue and a little bit of coding. It's like it's such a challenge, but I think automation is a very key piece for 2026.
yeah,
Mhm.
and I think you're right. I think that those solutions a lot of times when you look at that manufacturing industry and you say, well, how hard could it be, right? We're wiring up some sensors, right? We're getting some data from that,
Right.
making some decisions on it. It seems like that stuff should be really straightforward and super easy. But boy, is it fiddly, right? I say, at the end of the day, we end up being responsible for a lot of stuff, but at the end of the day, we're not electrical engineers, right? So, things like, hey, I need to wire up this appropriately and, I'm triggering these photo eyes. That stuff is so fiddly and so finicky. So I definitely feel you there. That's a great one. And I do love your discussion around talent as well, because that is, especially as it's getting harder to find. It is, it seems like it's a drive towards the bottom, right? For what you're paying or what you're giving people, right? And I think that
Right.
is just not sustainable, right? So I think that's a great point that you make around talent as well.
Yeah, I have a little bit more control because I manage my own company, but I can only imagine like when you're running an IT department for another company, that is the most challenging piece, I would think, because you're beholden to the budget that they give you, and if you want to start allocating money to your team for R&D and things like that, you've got upper management on, nah, we're not going to do R&D, but
Yep.
for automation, you kind of have to. I mean, I've given my employees Raspberry Pis and IoT devices and things to play around with this, and let's see how we can make these kind of things work in your spare time, or as you have downtime, things like that. So it's generated a lot of, hey, we could probably do this, but again, you need to have that budget to provide that type of environment.
Yep.
And like you said, you're dealing with dust and dirt and out in the field, and these things break. It's not this magical robotic AI universe that we're walking into. It's more of a I don't know, Westworld kind of thing, or a Fallout kind of world we're coming to.
It does feel like that jump from that Raspberry Pi that you have at home, it maybe is monitoring temperatures inside of your networking closet that you have at home, right, or your cabinet, to take that and say, all right, well, I'm going to put that into a manufacturing line, right, where we may do tens of millions of dollars down that line, and you say, oh, I've got a Raspberry Pi there, right? So it's like, all right, well, what am I looking at to help harden this and have failover and high availability. So it's all of those things, right? That POC, we're probably just as guilty of it as anybody else, right? Where those POCs suddenly become production things, and then you say, oh my goodness, right? Like this wasn't really designed for this business, right? Like I took a shoestring, right, and made this solution, but we need to kind of come back into it and reinvest, right? Keep that cycle moving, right? So, but yeah, definitely, that experimentation and being able to kind of drive that value to say, hey, I did pick up a couple of devices for my team, and said, hey, let's do some side projects. Let's see where we might be able to provide value or do things that are, kind of unique or interesting that work, right? Kind of help expand what your day-to-day looks like. I think is very indicative of kind of this AI centric world that we're talking about, where they want to break everything down into tiny individual kind of pieces and bite-sized chunks. That 100% is sort of that same methodology, but with a person, right? Saying, hey, here's some hardware, here's what you can program with it, here's what you could do, here's some sensors. Just make it check the air temperature, right, or the humidity or whatever that is, right, and then build from there, right? Those building blocks.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great because but usually, as you mentioned, that one thing you're experimenting with that you just threw together with shoestring and duct tape, all of a sudden becomes an integral part of the system, and now you're like, oh my goodness, I can't support this. What happens if this goes down?
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
So redundancy and backups are very important.
Yep. Agreed.
I feel like also a big thing is once you do it once with shoestring and duct tape, they keep thinking that you can you can keep doing things with the same shoestring and duct tape, and it's like, okay, well, it worked before, but that's not ideal. And so it's hard to explain that sometimes to someone in that is like, well, it works,
Very
so
good point.
why am I gonna
Very good
invest
point.
more?
Yep.
So
Yeah. Almost a be careful what you wish for situation, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, you did this for $50? Oh, well, we're going to take your budget down a notch.
Exactly.
That's right. Or we're going to expand it, and for $50, I'll put it everywhere. And you're like, whoa, hold on a second.
It's not actually supposed to only be $50.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So y'all mentioned a little bit about hiring too. And how much of a priority is that whenever you're talking about your wish list? Um, and not only hiring, but training your employees as well, because as we're expanding, as we're getting into new technology, there are certain specialties that people kind of need to have. um and Jason, you might need someone that is more electrically inclined, that is able to do those kinds of things. So this is a kind of a two-parter: is how important is hiring on your wish list, and how important is training too.
Yeah, absolutely. Clark, do you want to take this one to start with? I've jumped in first, so I'll let you get the first thought if you want.
Sure. Yeah, I can take. I can go real quick. Yeah. So we're hiring. We're looking for people, and because of there's not a whole lot of talent that's available despite all the layoffs. It becomes more and more challenging. So what I have been doing the past year, and what I'm going to be very aggressive about going into next year is um, pursuing people in the service industry, because we're client facing, and
Mhm.
generally IT is anyway, right? We're client facing. We're always dealing with help desk issues or whatever, uh, and it's our help desk. It's actually growing. So what I usually do is go out to the service industry, restaurants, things like that. Look for people who are like very courteous, we're professional, very humble, have a very servant oriented attitude, and, grow them from the ground up. Say, yeah, we want you as part of our team. But I don't know anything about tech. Well, we have a really good program. We have a really good team of mentorship and things like that. So I like growing from the ground up. It would be really nice to bring like a level 2, level 3 in, and get them going. But the reverse of that is, as you have these employees on for 2 or 3 years, you give them a pathway to level 2, level 3, so on and so forth. So, and what I've found, and I'm really excited about, and I've kind of championed here in the Dallas area, is women in tech. And there's so many. I'm on Twitter a lot. Sorry, X. Um, and there are so many women in tech on there that's kind of cool to watch. And you know, I'm not trying to be biased or anything, but they're very servant oriented or service oriented, and have more empathy than us guys. Don't want to stereotype there, but and they have done phenomenal, in our environment, in turning things around, and our clients just it's been a 180 for us. And I'm glad to support that, because before there weren't a lot of women in tech traditionally, but now there
Mhm.
are, and it's really broadened the field quite a bit, I think. So adding more people uh, is definitely on the horizon. Of course, training and you know standard operating procedures, all that goes along with it.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I think that that's a great call out that you make, right? That you know, while we are seeing a market that does have maybe more players on it from some of those layoffs and the tech companies that we've seen, there is still an advantage, right? To say, hey, let's bring someone in, right, that has soft skills, right? I'm a big proponent, and I've always talked about saying, we have those traits that we're wired with, right? Maybe you're really good with people, you're a diplomatic talker, right? You're able to kind of go through that. Well, I can teach you tech, right? I can teach you to be able to do, these items, right? Now, there are some other things that go with that, analytical thinking, problem solving, that kind of stuff, right? But I think for us, it comes down to, are you going to be a good fit, right? On the team and kind of the culture that we have, because we are a family owned business. So, we do have some of that smaller, almost like mom and pop style mentality, right? Where you're not just a number that sits in there. So, we definitely have hiring coming up this year. I've actually got an open data and analytics position. Just throwing it out there. If anybody is interested in the local Central Florida area, we are hiring a data analyst. I'd love to find someone local to do that for us. But I think it comes down to, over the years, I've worked to make our transition and our industry really has made this transition as well. But we've gone from 20 years ago where you'd think of IT and you'd say, hey, it's this dark closet. There's no windows. There's no lights. Everything is dark. I'm just in there, just hammering away on my keyboard. And somebody comes in and you go, oh, God, get out of here, right? It's fixed. It's fixed. Um, to now where we really are, uh, you know, collaborating with the business and being part of the team, right? So it really has become more of that, the business thrives because you don't just come to us and say, hey, I need a new thing for this, just make it happen. It becomes an idea of, hey, what problem are we solving, right? That's great. We can definitely do that for you. What are we going to be doing with that, right? What does the future hold for that? What does that look like? Sometimes it is just as easy as, well, this is broken, and fix it. But other times, there's an ask behind that from the business. So I got a little bit off track there, but it's all, to me, it's all about like those soft skills, right? That
Mhm.
comes down, and that to me is really important, because I want to make sure that the business likes to work with us, right? It's a you can't please everyone, right? And you can't be friends with everyone, right? I get that. There's personalities, and sometimes those things just don't mix. But at the end of the day, right, I want to be able to say, hey, can we be professional? Can we be courteous, right? I want to make sure that people, when they have a problem, they don't keep it to themselves and say, well, gosh, I don't want to work with that team because, boy, they give me a real hassle. So I'll just keep doing whatever, and I'll shove this under the rug, right, until someone actually makes me deal with it. So I think for us, that's, whenever I think about hiring, that's always what comes to mind is, I want somebody that's going to work with the business and champion for the business in really whatever role that is, right? Whether you're a help desk technician, whether you're, a database architect, even from my side, right? Director, CTO, like you should be collaborating and being that champion for the business. So I think hiring is going to continue, right? I think that even with the elephant in the room where we talked about AI, right? I still think that's going to change how we do it, right? It's going to change some of the tools that we use, but ultimately at this point, I don't see this for our particular industry. I don't see it as something that I'm suddenly going to walk in and just have 5 monitors that are facing me with agentic AI agents on them. And I'm going to sit in my control chair and just be like, all right, everything is moving smoothly. Keep it going, boys and girls. So,
Yeah, yeah. People higher ups might expect that sometimes, but it's important to let them know that that's not exactly how how IT is going to work. So, um, yeah, I am curious. So, if you're hiring specifically for people that have those soft skills, like Beth mentioned, the best technicians worked in customer service before they were hired, sales and clerks. Their customer engagement is impeccable. That's a skill you can't necessarily teach in a class. So, as you're hiring those folks, are there any specific uh, is there any specific training that you're trying to get your team involved in? This goes for both of y'all. But is there any like specific skill that you're trying to grow in this next year?
for us, we've had the last couple of years we've been really focused on like certifications, right? And we can obviously spend a whole session talking about certifications and their value or lack thereof, or wherever you land on that spectrum, right? But the last couple of years we've had a real push for that, just because I want to kind of get the team to experience more and hopefully bring some in that he can obviously leverage day to day. But one of the big things I think that we're looking at for the next year is a lot more of that soft skill, right? Because you can definitely pop out there and take a critical thinking. I wouldn't even call it a course, right? But you can look up and take some stuff on critical thinking or analytic problem solving, to try and expand sort of how you might tackle a problem or how you might look at things. So for us, internally on my team, we do have a strong technical background. So for me, it's continuing to push that idea of, you know, how can we diplomatically work with the business, right? How can we make sure that they're wanting to come to us, and helping to elevate our level of service. So for us, it's more soft skill related, for those, and that can be things like local conferences, Obviously, there's a ton of, pick any of your online learning platforms, right? Or even things like this, right, where you interact in this, the IT leadership side, where you've got that kind of back and forth, where you can say, hey, here's what I'm seeing, here's what I'm looking at, and just kind of see what else is out there, right? Because I tell my team all the time, I know this feels like a wish problem, but I guarantee you it's not only a wish problem, right? Other businesses are having this happen as well. They're going to say rah 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 rah. They do the same thing, right? It's not just us. It's not, the grass is green out there. It might be greener, it might not be, but I've come from a number of places and been through a number of industries that, it what you know here, and those problems are in some shape or form happening elsewhere as well. You just may not know about it. Maybe it's buried underneath a chain of command or larger organization that is siloed, right? There's all kinds of reasons for that, but helping them to experience and exposure more, because it's important for my team to be successful both here at Wish, but I'm very open to say, I want you to grow as an individual, right? Professionally, I want you to grow with us. I want you to help bring Wish forward. But also, I know that I want you to grow professionally for yourself, because that will help you, right? Ultimately, I'd love if you stayed, right? I tell my team all the time, listen, I would love if you stayed and were lifers with me here at Wish. But I know that that's the reality, that it's not that really the case anymore, right? 20 years ago, 100%, right? Your parents growing up, oh man, going to work for Ma Bell. Yep, I'm gonna retire there, right? It's not really like that anymore. So I wanna have the team set up for success, definitely with us. But I also understand that those skills, if and when they leave, I want them to be successful elsewhere, right? Sorry,
Mhm.
super long-winded. I apologize.
No, that was great.
Yeah. So I kind of, as you were talking there, like I agree with you on the certifications. Like we stacked up on certifications this year, and that's it's a double-edged sword, because for us seasoned IT people, those certifications are basically worthless. But for people who are just coming into the industry, it's very important, because it teaches them the terminology. Gives them familiarity. It creates this pathway for them. So um, I focus on certifications a lot. Just because I like, this year I had my entire staff certify on Ninja, on Bitdefender, on all the little stuff in the stack, and it was kind of amazing. It spurred a lot of conversation. Oh, hey, did you know you could do this? From our level ones, and of course our level twos, level three. Oh, of course we knew this, but took a fresh set of eyes, and oh, well, why aren't we doing this? Kind of thing. So I think that aspect is very helpful. Another thing is like bringing the service oriented people, from service industries. They have a great personality, great salesmanship, great leadership on the front lines. They may be lacking in tech, but you go to your seasoned techs who've been in the industry for 20 plus years, and they don't want to talk to clients anymore. Or they don't want to, do that part, the people part. They just want to stick in their tech. So it's a good kind of middleman, kind of, if you will, to bridge that gap between them, the level ones and the level twos. And, I keep having to remind my level two, level three staff, look, there's a reason that you need to mentor these people. And, the first thing we do on our onboarding is I pull all the parts together and have them build their own computer. Usually it's a desktop, but we also have laptops for the field. So that gives them instant familiarity. So that's what I look to. The other things are, mentoring about the IP stack, like troubleshooting from the IP stack, just basics. And, over time they grow. And I think like the fourth turning, I think we're cyclical, we cycle a lot. And I think we're cycling back to more of a kind of a more of a caring leadership than anything else. And it takes time. We've come from, the 90s and the 2000s of so focused on quarters and bottom lines and, what are we doing? I think, we're getting to a better place. It takes time. It takes several generations, but I think that, you mentioned, small family owned. I think that's kind of where we're heading back to. And I'm glad. I mean, I am glad I have the opportunity to give back and mentor every day. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, yeah. There's definitely something to be said, right, for those senior leaders out there, and honestly, even not just only senior leaders, right? Obviously, sharing, right, and even when we bring on, it's been a while, so we brought on an entry level tech on site and on board with us. But it was one of the things that we did early on within the first month or two. We said, hey, let's have you drive this, right? We're going to talk about something, and I'm going to let you drive it, right? You may be the newest person here, but if you can talk about it and you can, even answer questions, or even just to say, gosh, that's a really interesting idea. Here's what I know about that, but I'll have to go back and take a look and see what I can come back with. That builds that confidence, and that gives them that feeling of being able to say, hey, I know this, right? And it's, while I always tend to say, oh, if you've been in the room the longest, then you know the most. That's not even necessarily the case, right? Everybody brings that unique focus or that unique energy to their position. And it's I like to show, hey, regardless of where you are in the stack, right, we can have you interacting with the business, running a training session, our internal webinars. It doesn't, you don't have to be here for 10 years before you get a chance to step in front of the business and say, hey, let me talk to you about something cool, right? And I think that's a great point to make, right? Like that idea of, those individuals that have been there longer helping to mentor, and then being able to let those people you've mentored kind of blossom. And some of them will say, gosh, I don't talk well in front of people, right? Others will say, gosh, I could talk all day, like me, right? I could talk all day.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I'm one of those people that's not a talk. I'm not talking in front of people. So somehow I ended up here. And it's one of those things that I have had to learn, and it's good. It's good that I've learned it, but um yeah, just breaking people out of that box too. Um I wanted to switch back a little bit to the technology, kind of what we're looking at in the next year. And there are a lot of emerging technologies that you might be excited to implement. Are there any specific emerging technologies that you think will help your business in the next year?
So I'll be a little bit selfish on this one. So I know we've kind of danced around the AI, right? But one of the things that for us that I think is super important from an emerging perspective side, I talked about our network refresh, network revamp. One of the things that I think is very interesting, and I think will bring value to us as an organization, is what some of these larger players are starting to embed inside of their platforms, specifically around the agentic AI side, right? Being able to say, hey, I had a problem with this particular laptop. Can you tell me what was going on at the network at the time, right? Tell me how it was connected. Tell me, what that jitter looked like. Talk to it to say, hey, help me diagnose this, right? Was this a hardware issue on the machine? Was this a access point issue? Is this something with our backbone? What happened here, right? What did that look like? And I think that's definitely a thing for us that's in the stocking for this year with our network refresh. And I think that you're seeing a lot of those larger players, right? Those, Junipers and Arubas and Meraki's, Extremes, right? You're seeing those large players in the market kind of adjust their offerings to include that, because we're starting to see more of that. Not everybody is a call center, right? I cannot put an agent on there for an end user to interact with for every single industry, but I could put an agent on there to interact with for my team, who maybe I don't have like a network administrator on staff. I have a team that knows enough to be dangerous, right? And we can keep things running and do that. But if I can put something in place that helps them navigate platforms or tools to use them better, or to say, hey, what insights am I missing or am I seeing from this, or should I be seeing from this? That to me is definitely something that's emerging that I think we're going to see a lot of really big benefit on. Um, Specifically, I talked about it from the networking side, but I think you're going to see a lot of these tools start to put that stuff together, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think also to dovetail on that, like, with the hiring challenges that you have, AI gives the opportunity for people to troubleshoot, by learning through troubleshooting by asking prompts and prompting questions and things like that, and maybe getting narrowed down to a solution. So that is helpful. Um, you know, from my perspective, uh, I'm more about, security and containing the data leakage around AI. So in my industry, working with private equity and family offices, they're doing big deals, and kind of like all the breaches we've seen this year of people asking specific personal information into, a prompt, and that showing up in archive.org, or, the Wayback Machine, or, somewhere else in another forum. And just this morning, Grok had a leak, uh, a data leakage, and they found all kinds of conversations and stuff on the on the Wayback Machine as well. It's that's like I say, laws always lag the technology, and getting everybody to kind of carve this out. And that's one of the things we have to train our employees on, is be careful what you say into a prompt, and don't share any potential client information. As long as you keep it generic, great, it's helpful, but you're actually building data for other people. And if they are using that information to find out about your clients, to find out about you personally, I kind of lean more into, some privacy things as well. So, I'm very closely monitoring all the stuff going on in London right now, where privacy concerns and digital ID. And I think digital ID is going to be a huge thing. Obviously, because the bill that was just passed this year, and all the money that's being dumped into it. I mean, digital ID is going to be a huge thing. Definitely 2026, 2027.
Mhm. Um, what emerging technologies do you think are overhyped?
AI.
Yeah. Just the AI in the general, right? In the general sense,
Yeah.
for sure. And
I
Is that
think
because
the images of like these robots taking everybody's jobs and scaring everybody, and it's just, this is what we're exposed to all the time, and it's not true. It doesn't work that way in the real world. I mean, how many times have we been promised jetpacks and flying cars, and throughout history, and 3D printers? You'll be able to print everything in the world. You'll be able to print your house. You'll be able to print your food. I mean, we've been exposed to like these great technologies that are still there, but the infrastructure hasn't been built for them, and it's impossible because it's so expensive. So
Mhm.
I think AI's challenge and the robotic challenge is infrastructure, laws, litigation, so on and so. I mean, it's just so much, but AI is definitely overhyped. Sorry, I didn't want to
no,
interrupt you there, Jason.
no, that's good, right? I think we both would have tackled that the same exact way, right? Like I feel like everywhere we go, every conference I feel like I've been at, for the last 6 months to a year, it feels like 95% of their content is all centered around AI,
Yeah.
which I get, right, and I feel, but the other side of that, and the struggle that I'm feeling internally, and I've even had it from our business, right, our executive suite that says, hey, we want that AI, right? Let's use AI. I say, okay, what problem are we solving, right? I would love to sit down, right? I would love to talk about this. We can lay something out, but what are we trying to solve, right? That's the key thing, and I think that a lot of businesses are, in my opinion, struggling with that, because every time you go to one of these, you'll go to a conference, and this isn't, if anybody's talked about this, I'm not disparaging you at all, but it feels like a lot of times I'll go to a conference and they'll say, hey, you're going to get actionable items about, putting together something with AI. And you go in and they start talking about their agents for a call center. And I'm like, well, that's great. I know that use case, right? I love that use case. It works really well for that industry, but what else is there, right? There has to be more
Mhm.
than that, right? And it feels to me just like, having been in the industry, right? It feels like big data. It feels like machine learning, right? It feels like data warehousing and self-service BI, right? We go through these cycles, right? We have this stuff that happens, and we say this is the next big thing, And we do have items that come out of it, and there are technologies that happen. But this one to me, we opened up the door so quickly on a personal basis to be able to
Yeah.
say, hey, I don't know anything about, say, changing oil. Let's go ahead and say I need to change the oil in my 2020, Ford Focus, right? Tell me how to do that, right? Just you could have done that before, right? You could have asked a search engine for it. You could have looked it up in YouTube, but it's this interaction that we get with these AI tools, right? That really says, well, it's more like I'm talking to a person, right? I'm talking to an individual that's helping me work through this, so I can maybe not have the best prompt, but I can get there after I've kind of iterated and talked to somebody. So I think for us, the difficulty has been we let the personal usage of that kind of open the door. And then the business just kind of came in with the foot and just kicked it the rest of the way in and said, all right, let's get this. If we're not doing it, we're last. We're going to be left behind. And all these other companies that are using it, gosh, what are we going to do? So I think that it's definitely overhyped. And I think that the struggle today is finding good use cases for it, that make sense and will provide value for you. So it doesn't become just a checkbox, and becomes something that you can actually look at the ROI for.
Mm.
Yeah, and I think we're already seeing some backlash from all this hype that we've suffered through this year. You're seeing more people post, "Hey, this isn't really working for us. We haven't found a solution." I have clients who went out and hired uh, programmers to build them their own LLM and their internal AI that does this, that, and the other for real estate deals, for private equity deals, for oil and gas, and unfortunately, they haven't been able to deliver. I mean, we've helped from the automation perspective, but what these guys have come in and promised, oh, I'm going to get all these beautiful things that are going to, you're going to get rid of all these jobs. You're going to, you don't need your accountant anymore. You're going to be able to do all. It doesn't work. I mean, they buy into the hype, and the actual iteration of it doesn't. It just never works out the way the hype works. And this is why I think people are going to reverse a little bit and say, okay, we're not rejecting the technology entirely. There's good use cases for it, but it's not going to solve all my problems. It's not going to reduce my bottom line. It's not going to help me reduce my workforce or grow my workforce by replacing people with these agents. So I think that's a lot of what we're going to experience in the first quarter of next year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the companies, right? If a company is one that is focused on bottom line, right? As I talked about that, like drive to the bottom, if a company is focused on that, then when they talk about AI and they talk about agents, they are going to look at that as workforce reductions, right? But
Yeah.
if you have a company that is one that is maybe more employee focused or centered around the employee, or saying, hey, yeah, we see this is coming, but we see it as a tool, they're going to look at that differently, right? But I think a lot of that stuff
Right.
drives on what the business culture looks like, right?
Right.
If you have a good business culture already, then the idea of whatever comes out of this AI bubble, right, that we're seeing, this hype bubble that we're in, that to me has more potential to be positive than a company that is, just saying, hey, I run with the bare number I need, and if you aren't meeting whatever X number of metric it is, and you're out the door and you're gone, right? You're just another number. I think that this AI hype bubble has the opportunity to bring that potential backlash that you're seeing, right? For that. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to also ask about, since we're talking about emerging technologies, when you think about your wish list for the next year, obviously, Jason, you're halfway through yours, but if you were to be thinking about your wish list for the next year, what percentage of your budget is usually allocated towards emerging technology versus maintenance and things that will just keep the business running? Like, how much of your wish list is just that?
Yeah. So again, I'll cheat a little bit here because we are in a bit of a unique situation with our year that we're in currently. Our kind of emergent technology budget and our refresh budget from that perspective is vastly higher than my like stay and keep the lights on budget. So for us, we're definitely on the opposite side of that, just because of what we have on in the pipe. But I would definitely say that my budget for innovation, right, is probably I would say you're probably a quarter, right, of the budget, right, from an innovation perspective, and maybe that might be a little bit high, because traditionally um, we do overall budget for keeping the lights on and a bit to move us forward from an innovation perspective. But I have to tie and hitch my wagon to business initiatives, to really be able to sell that, right? I have a great relationship with our CFO, but at the end of the day, right, his job is to make sure that what we're doing is, fiscally responsible, right, for us as a company. So I always hitch my wagon to business initiatives. And at the end of the day, a lot of times those business initiatives are not necessarily, hey Jason, let's get some brand new software platform to do this, or oh hey, we see that aging laptops, let's get those rolled out, right? So we're a little bit of a different one this year, just because we do have those large expenditures that the CFO and I were able to drive forward in the business. But I think in general, I would say probably not enough, right? I can do a better job of tying our innovation to business initiatives to help kind of bring that, maybe not into parity, but to help kind of raise that number a bit. So
Mhm.
I think from my perspective, working with multiple other companies, every company is different. Some are 60/40, some are 40/60, flipped, reverse. It just depends on the industry. And it's kind of indicative of our K shaped economy right now. How you have like the top 10% having the capital, having the investment resources, the wherewithal, the real estate, so on and so forth to execute. And then you have other businesses that are just struggling to stay on top of the, you know, of their schedule or their tread water basically. So I have clients who are coming in saying, we got to just do the bare minimum and we're going to do maintenance. We're only going to replace what breaks. And then I have other clients saying, the world is our oyster. We've got all these investors and we're going to blow it up in 2026. So what I'm seeing is oil and gas, manufacturing, and private equity acquisitions are stepping up a little bit, just because the purse strings from the top level are being loosened, and of course that always trickles down. Of course, not all the way, but it's looking pretty promising what we're seeing from private equity. There's a lot of movement, but that's nevertheless a challenge. And for the ones that are spending money, they are moving into bigger offices. They're growing. They're adding more people. They're purchasing commercial real estate. They're purchasing fields out in West Texas. I mean, there's just a lot of activity right now. So for those, it's going to be innovation. I mean, we're looking at a lot of innovation in oil and gas as far as redundancy systems, PLC devices, SCADA systems, things like that. Same with manufacturing. They're asking us to automate more and more to get rid of the paperwork, not to get rid of employees, but to get rid of the processes so that we can handle more orders, those kind of things. So, kind of back to what you were saying, Jason, if you've got a more family focused or oriented, business, not from, it's all family, but it's actually a mentality, then you're trying to save people time and stop doing the mundane rote stuff, which, I always point to the example of backups, right? Cove, Enable Cove came out with this great backup solution that automates the checks, right? It verifies the data, it does a restore. It's all automated and it sends you a report and says, yeah, this backup is good. We used to have a person doing that. Now that person's freed up to do bigger and better projects, more
Yep.
exciting projects, right? Who wants to check backups all day long? So I think that's where AI and automation is really going to help, is get rid of the mundane things like going through invoices. And we got to get rid of that stuff if we're going to use our talent for what it really should be.
Mhm. Yeah. All right. Well, I think those are all the questions I had for y'all, but do y'all have any kind of last minute thoughts that maybe things I didn't cover or anything like that?
So I just have a quick kind of additional thought, right, as we talk about kind of upcoming year, or even just what we're looking for, right, from a wish list perspective. And I think it's something that doesn't, at least from our perspective, I think that it doesn't necessarily get the attention that it deserves, is going through and looking at what systems you have, right, and how you're using those systems. So, I look at, whether you've got a cybersecurity solution, right, your endpoint stuff, maybe vulnerability exposure management type platforms. So we have those, right, where we say, hey, listen, maybe I'm a shop, right? I've got that. I don't say anything, but well, no names, but we're X shop, right? But are we using that well, right? Is it one of those things where I'm guilty of, that AI hype bubble where I said, hey, I need to have a vulnerability exposure management solution. We have it, we installed it, we've got endpoints everywhere. Perfect. I've checked that box, right? But are we leveraging it, right? Are we using it like we're supposed to? Just like, your solution about checking on those backups and making sure, hey, are these good, right? It's that idea of, hey, I've put that in, I've got the first step through the door of saying we have X solution or X platform, but let's make sure that my team knows how to use it. And Clark, you hit on that earlier when you were talking about some of the certifications for your platforms that you have, the Ninja and Bitdefender and things, right? Those I think are great examples of making sure that the money that you do spend, right, is being spent in a way that is beneficial, right? And it isn't just that checkbox that you have on an end line somewhere that you say, yep, here's this thing in the budget, we've got it, we set it, forget it, and we just walked away from it. Some software is like that, but not all of it is like that. So I think that's my kind of closing takeaway, because when you think about things on a wish list, a lot of times is new stuff that you don't have. So mine is kind of stepping back and saying, are we leveraging the stuff that we do have well?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, and so that's definitely on my horizon as well. We already have so many tools. Our clients already have so many tools and software capabilities that they're barely even scratching the surface of. And I'm kind of, my goal this year is to kind of streamline a lot of this and bring it in and get rid of some products that we're not really even using. And a lot of that is just giving your team time to learn the stuff and to work with it, and make sure that they have allocated time during the week. Okay, I'm going to give you an hour each day to work on this and to master this, and come back with some good ideas of how we can run this. And that doesn't, I mean, all that is built into their salary. It's not a huge expense. And some of the more innovative ideas come from just ideas like, hey, why don't we do it this way? Or why don't we build a workflow that can automate this? And we've been focusing on Ninja One for the past year, and I definitely see us focusing on this in the next year. There's some great automations out there, and the community is sharing some great scripting, and that doesn't cost anything. I mean, we already have Ninja in place. We just need to learn more about what it can do. Same with Bitdefender and some of their endpoint protection, managed endpoint protection. All of these other stack items that we use. CrowdStrike, so on and so forth. You can go on and on. If you just take the time and get your team trained up and learning on that, that's nothing but making sure that gets done during a week. And that's a huge add, because already you're adding more and more value. And I'm gonna definitely focus our clients on the shadow IT aspect and the shadow AI aspect. We got to get rid of that stuff. And they're coming around. They're seeing, hey, we're paying for all this stuff and it's not really working for us. So let's focus on just using what we really need to use and get rid of what we don't.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. Well, awesome. Thank you all so much for joining today. A really great conversation. And yeah, hopefully everybody has a good holiday season. Um, we'll be back in a couple of weeks, which is weird to say because it doesn't feel like the next one. It doesn't feel like January is that
Right.
close, but we do have a stream coming up on January 6th. Where uh, we'll be discussing resolutions for the new year. So it's in 3 weeks rather than 2. So luckily there's a little bit of breathing room there, but yeah, we'll be discussing IT resolutions for the new year for IT leaders. And yeah, it should be a good conversation. But thank y'all again for joining today, both in the chat and here. Really appreciate your time here on the panel. And yeah, thank you
Absolutely.
so much.
Thanks for
Perfect.
having me. Happy holidays.
Yep. Happy
Yeah,
holidays.
happy holidays. Thanks, y'all.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.